My background or about myself is I was born in Tibet, Eastern Tibet, Golok, and my root guru, there's many wonderful teachers I made and studied, but especially Khambu Munser, who was a direct disciple of Khambu Ngakchon. I received teachings from Nondo to all the way to Dzogchen teachings, and spent time with him for 3 or 4 years. And then at that time, all monasteries just rebuilding. There's not much really established as a Shadra or Drupda. Everything's just like beginning of the rebuilding monastery. I studied with here and there different lamas, and then I left from Tibet in 1992. Then India and Nepal for a few days, maybe two months, about 2 months, and then came to America, and then kind of like karmically kind of work with different translators and Sangye, and then my main work is really a translation work with the translators, and here and there I will teach, but not really just making programs here and there, but just mainly focusing translation work. And then we found Light Embirutana, and Khenchen Namdro Rinpoche taught serious programs start like more than 20 years ago. We both serve as translators, and whatever he taught, then also the main text we translate and published, that kind of that kind of work. And there's many details, of course, but really not that beneficial in this general information about me, and like that.
Hello, my name is Sangye Khandro, and I became a Buddhist as a young woman back in 1972 in India. And I studied in the Gelu tradition for many years, some of the important texts, and I realized I needed to begin learning Tibetan language since I was planning to continue on with Vajrayana Buddhism, and I needed to be able to speak with my teachers. So I started studying Tibetan for selfish reasons, but as it turned out, I ended up being part of founding different centers in the West, and as a part of that, we would invite Rinpoches to come, and they needed translators. So I began working as an oral translator for many years, and in fact, that was mainly what I did for about a 15-year period of time, translating for some of the greatest teachers who came to visit in the West at the time, and touring with them, and like that. Later, Lama Chonam and I founded Laita Bharasana Translation Group, and we began translating literature. But our translation efforts are based on receiving the teachings for specific treatises and important texts that are being transmitted to students over periods of time by Khenchen Namdro Rinpoche. And so we began working closely with Khenchen Namdro Rinpoche, and we would prepare the translation and he would teach. And this went on for many, many years, and is still going on. And in between all that, I was the spiritual companion for Gelter Rinpoche for also many years, and helped him to found different Dharma centers. and have just tried my best to serve the Buddha's doctrine and sentient beings for some time now. And it's just been a pleasure to be able to have a chance to visit New Zealand and meet all of the lovely people here too.
View is really kind of important terminology, and also many different ways we can understand view. External, internal, beyond external, internal, actually. But view, basic Buddhist view is really believing karmic cause and result, and life after birth, and all this basic kind of Buddhist beliefs also view, a Buddhist view. And then a view of, as Vajrayana, Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism, the view of, for example, practice in generation stage and completion stage, then there is a view that this phenomena, whatever we perceive in, is through intellectual understand, and then gain confidence with that view, which is the pure realm of the deity, whatever you practice in. And then the living beings is male, female, and male deities, like a god, goddess and goddess, gods and goddesses, or wisdom deities, male, female. Literally, this samsara perceived as pure realm, which actually, first, when we really introduce ourselves and convinced this is Buddhist teachings, but then later when you go deeper and practice deeper and accomplish the path of that generation stage, it is said you gain confidence with that view, and you also perceive that way. That is also a view of a Vajrayana path. And then there is a view of Dzogpa Chimbo and Mahamudra, which is really not object, something like object and subject kind of understand, but beyond object and subject. And beyond this ordinary phenomena, that view that basically the emptiness, that also spontaneously the qualities of unconditional love and everything, just like in one view, the view that beyond object and subject. This is a very, very profound. It's not easy to say in few sentences. That is really the ultimate goal of the Buddha Dharma. When we have that view is, we have to put in category view, but view usually there is something kind of assertion, believing, and there is something to recognize or present. But this kind of like Mahamudra and Dzogpa Chimbo, that level of view is really beyond this conceptual mind. Therefore, it's not only just say and intellectually, but also the idea present in the words, but then have to accomplish through meditation. the meditation that also based on devotion towards lineage masters. And this view is really occurred in the minds of practitioners depend on their how much devotion and faith in their lineage masters. So there's so many things to say, but also the subject is profound, and the view is everything. And another way I can say, the view is everything. When you understood the view means you understood the phenomena, the nature of phenomena. Once you understand the nature of phenomena, that means you also understood the nature of your mind too. When you have confidence in that view, then the path is effortless to accomplish. And without view, everything is a stare, kind of like a mind-based view, which means there is a possibility to accumulate virtue and purify negative karma, but also not necessary to accomplish the supreme city or the state of enlightenment without view.
It is a very vast subject, as Lama Chonam just mentioned. But so as not to, repeat what he just said, I will add that we need to hold in our mind an awareness of the Buddha nature, which is the essence or the nature of all living beings, without exception. All living beings, those that we see, those that we don't see, as long as they're alive, they have Buddha nature. It is the essence of their consciousness. It's the primordial nature of their consciousness. It's always been that way, and it never changes. And so the real crux of the view for Mahayana and Vajrayana and Mahamudra and Dzogpa Chenpo is to identify that essence as the essence of all living beings. So there comes to be this regard for them that one may not otherwise have, because one sees that they have the full potential to awaken as an enlightened being, as a Buddha. That's what is meant by Buddha nature. However, will they naturally awaken as an enlightened being without having the appropriate root causes and contributing circumstances? That would be very rare. And so, of course, they must recognize, and then they must meet teachers, teachings that introduce them to rekindle this Buddha nature. And the way of describing the view is based on that which is already true and real, or this essence, this nature. And as one goes up the ladder, if you will, of the vehicles, and one arrives at the vehicle of Ati Yoga, which is the highest step on that staircase, the pinnacle, then at that time, one really hones in on this primordial wisdom nature. And there we must receive many instructions on exactly what that is, so that whatever we're doing on our path, it is allowing us to rekindle and blossom this nature. And so for me, the view is really holding this awareness and simultaneously, from a relative point of view, cultivating compassion and renunciation towards all else that has nothing to do with this view, that's just circular or repetitive. And then at the empty empty nature of all that is, that nothing remains stable or permanent in this illusory existence. So until we are able to completely awaken and identify this wisdom potential, we have to, follow the path and work hard to actualize the view. So the view becomes the most important aspect of the path. It is the most important aspect of the path.
I think not just like only Troma practice, but as a Buddhist practitioner, really cultivate love and compassion. We always, every level of teaching, mention this, but just really cultivate that quality, not just only intellectual, but to genuine love and compassion, because that kind of level of practice or love and compassion is not through logic, but also realized the view. Again, go back to the subject of view of emptiness. Then this kind of unconditional love that we always say in bodhicitta. This indivisible emptiness and compassion is really like the ultimate tool for Troma practice. Any kind of path of Buddha Dharma, but especially Troma path, I think it's really important to focus in that, to have view. When you have the view, every aspect of Troma practice makes sense, but also because directly really working with the intense feelings, just cutting through, and not something like a cut corners, but directly engaging with the intense emotions and cutting through. And in order to do that, you have to have view. With the view, you can accomplish that goal and also enhance one's practitioner or one's practice become effortless. That's why there's many qualities, of course, develop, and then it's foundation for any practice but Troma. But the most important is, just I said, view. And view is really, it's everything. Like, for example, Milarepa said, I was scared of death, and then he ran away to the mountains, and then he lost the fear of death in the mountains. That covers everything, literally. When he afraid of death means at that time he really believe in karmic cause and result, what he accumulate negative karma, and if he died without purifying or deal with that karma, and then that karma lead to the lower realms. That's why there is a fear. And then he run to the mountains, and then what he did, meditate, found the view, discovered the view, and then accomplished the view. And then once he accomplished the view, there is no death. He lost the fear of death in the mountains, and also that tells he accomplished the view beyond this karmic cause and result and dualistic mind. And so important, this kind of like the Buddhist way of kind of presentation is sometimes as a practitioner, oh, this part is really makes sense for me. I can relate, but this part doesn't make much sense for me, and we choosing. But if we really following the traditional lineage, then we just our paths become authentic, and also there's not much deviation because we really follow in exactly footsteps of the masters. And in brief, really, for this level of practice is to cultivate view. The view just like how really cultivate confidence in one's view, just like Sangye said right now, a few minutes ago. And that's the only way, I think, we can say we can practice Troma in general, Buddha Dharma, but especially Troma practice.
You know, it's important to bring up the dualistic mind versus this wisdom essence that we are seeking to rekindle through our practice. What is the reason that we are unable to be successful? Because the dualistic mind is predominant and overshadows everything that we think, say, and do. 3 doors are controlled by dualistic mind. What does a dualistic mind mean? It means believing in the true nature of the subject, your own self-identity, and then objectifying reference points from the perspective of the agent, the subject. And so always engaging in that way, outside, externally, objectively, as the subject, who's the recipient. This doesn't sound like there should be any problem, but there is a big problem when you try to accomplish the spiritual path for recultivating and rekindling Buddha nature. And so in Troma practice, really the aspirant needs to be equipped with information about how to cut through. Chut means to cut or sever from the very source or the root, this dualistic mind. So that it is, you could imagine it's severed from the root or it's uprooted. Imagine what it would be like to rest in wisdom awareness without any subject or object. And so that is the state that one is replicating while we're practicing on the path with the deities, the dakinis, in the case of Troma, the 3 kaya dakinis. We are replicating that state of enlightened presence. And so, in order to be prepared to know how to do that, one needs information on this whole process of dualistic mind versus wisdom awareness. One needs to have a very strong appreciation for the wisdom lineage and what the Sambhogakaya deities represent to us. And so much of this is dependent upon faith and devotion, because we can't see this wisdom essence as a tangible thing. If we were seeing it as a tangible thing, that would be the dualistic mind, seeing an objective reference point as it pertains to itself. This is seen only through omniscient wisdom awareness. And so how do we do that? That's why we practice a path called Troma Nagmo or Dujam Troma Chut. And so it's a very, complete path which produces profound results, absolute highest results. But one needs to be under the guidance of a teacher or teachers, and one needs to always relate and be carefully guided so that there's no going astray. There's no wasting time or becoming distracted in the wrong direction.
The question, the subject is really, really profound and vast, but Treckcho and Thogal is really, of course, there is every path has the kind of like resultant state, and like Mahamudra or Madhyamukha, and according to Nyima, Treckcho and Thogal is the kind of the resultant state of the path. But Treckcho is really to understand the nature of phenomena as not existed, truly not existed like we think, and to understand the emptiness of the phenomena. It's not just only intellectual understand, but completely with confidence. And that's kind of like really the view of Treckcho or emptiness. This emptiness is not just only through practitioners' intellectual understand established emptiness, but this emptiness is to understand from the beginning there's nothing existed as object and subject, but the state of emptiness that fully endowed the qualities of kayas and wisdoms. And that kind of emptiness is not intellectual understand of emptiness, but gaining within that emptiness has also hold the wisdom qualities. In order to reveal that wisdom qualities, then you practice Thogal. Thogal has so many methods, different ways gazing, different ways of like postures, and so much. Even though we practicing through that method and engaging with the external, like the light and different things, but the qualities that accomplished through that is, it is said, not comes from externally, within the wisdom mind, have that qualities. That's you really engaging through practice. But with Treckcho's view, even you experience the Thogal visions, a light, rainbows, kayas, whatever, because of the Treckcho's view, there is nothing fixation or attachment like ordinary mind do. That's why these two paths, Treckcho and Thogal, is indivisible practice. Like without Thogal's view, you can practice Treckcho, but without Treckcho's view, you cannot practice Thogal. That kind of practice, and both very profound, and this is really like a very advanced practitioners only can receive. Treckcho view also introduce sometimes one by one, like one student on time. Introduce the nature of your mind is, if you able to understand that view, what introduced by your teacher is also Treckcho's view. And then Thogal also, not publicly and traditionally, not so much publicly, but just group of sincere practitioners practice, introduce and practice. And that's why if we have those teachings, it is said Thogal practice is the highest, but also enhance Treckcho's view. You practice Thogal, but just everything is swift and fast and not so much also deviation and that kind of so much qualities you can say. And there is these days now there is authentic teachings about these teachings available, and also teachers teaching, and the lineage is live, and not only live but really propagating the lineage, these wisdom teachings in this part of the world in English. And I hope really sincere practitioners connect with this path.
If we have a look at the liturgy for the Troma cycle, whether it is the Khandro, the Poa, any of the four feasts, or the concise sadhana or the intermediate sadhana. So we have all this liturgy already translated into English. Then there you can see how important these methods are as it pertains to the two aspects of the path of Dzogchen. Because that's really the level of the Troma practice. And so in saying that, it means that, just as Lama Chonam described, generally Treckcho is the emptiness aspect, and Thogal is the appearance aspect. We have this in Madhyamaka also. We have this in Mahamudra, appearance, emptiness, empty, appearance. But in Dzogpa Chenpo, it is different. It is quite different. And the difference lies in the presentation of the ground of being, or sometimes it's called the basis of everything. And also the discussion of the primordial Buddha, Buddha Samantabhadra, who never awakened as a Buddha and never became a sentient being. So in Dzogchen, the belief is that this primordial state, represented by the primordial Buddha, has always been the awakened state, and there was no need to awaken it, because it was already primordially awakened, and then there was no deviating from it to become a wandering sentient being in confusion. And so that is more or less the main point of Treckcho, that one has to then receive teachings on, okay, what is this ground of being? And it's called, in Dzogchen terminology, kadak, or original purity. So the ground of original purity, that is where one cuts through, or one identifies this primordial state, which has always been only pure and can never be anything other than that. But that from that, there is an energy which has to do with wind and the state of consciousness. So as Buddhists, we believe that there is an ongoing continuum called the primordial consciousness, or Rigpa, which was never born and it never dies. And so it just endures indefinitely. But it's not just some state of vacuity where there is no energy. And so the energy of it is referred to in Dzogchen terminology as an unobstructed power. and it manifests as appearances. And so because we cannot separate appearances from our reality, appearances are arising as the unobstructed power of this originally pure state. And Samantabhadra, the primordial Buddha, always knew this and never deviated from this. But we sentient beings became confused in one split second about the nature of appearances. And in that split second, we identified or reified them as other than one's own originally pure nature, manifesting as the unobstructed power of itself. And so now it becomes something outside, external. And then there is a subject identifying it incorrectly. And this is the beginning of the dualistic mind. And, or becoming a sentient being versus remaining as a primordial Buddha. So Thogal corresponds to how we see the nature of these appearances. And as Lama Chonam alluded to, in truth, in Thogal practice, when you work with the visions and the luminosities of Thogal, by holding certain secret postures and ways of gazing, the practice is very, very sacred and kept secret and highly guarded. So that practitioner is practicing there and gazing, and they are training to see the molecular level of phenomenal existence as wisdom light particles, and right down to partless particles, or narcs. They are trained to see everything as that. Everything that we otherwise with an ordinary mind see to be compounded form. For a Thogal practitioner, they're undoing that, not even trying. They're just simply gazing from original purity at the unobstructed power of its own manifestation as luminosity. And so this is how the rainbow body is accomplished. If you really thought about it, it's not some magic thing that suddenly someone turns into a rainbow, but they actually perfect this practice to the point where compounded phenomena, whether it's outside of themselves or the image of their own form, dissolves into its own luminosity. And that's what all the wisdom deities are anyway. All Sambhogakaya wisdom deities, a kaya is an enlightened embodiment of what? Bindus, or molecules of light energy in rainbow colors. And so you can get an idea or an appreciation for just how deep this practice goes in terms of the view, but how effective it can be in terms of, really shifting our whole perspective concerning reality. And so once a practitioner is ready for it, then they would engage only in actual Treckcho and actual Thogal practices. They wouldn't do any other kinds of practices, just that. But prior to that, there are stages leading to that, such as the preliminaries, such as the feasts and the sadhanas, and these are stages that lead to that. They're part of that, but they're actually not the actual Treckcho and Thogal practices. Those come in retreat later on when one is ready to begin them.